Hi guys, and welcome to Higher Hertz. I'm Justin Leopard, your cello teacher online, and today we're going to go deeper into the bow hold. If you've been watching our other videos, we've been introducing how to play cello, how to find a cello, how to conceive of cello, all of the really good stuff. And today I want to go into something that I know is very, very tricky. Certainly takes a long time to kind of even start to get the hang of, and certainly to master, but the bow hold is one of the most important parts of playing the cello, so we're going to just discuss it in a little bit more detail today, try to go over all of the nooks and crannies of what's going on, and get you guys going with making a good sound on the cello. So the basic bow hold is kind of your fingers mostly relaxed over the bow, where your middle finger is at about the bottom of the rubber over the winding here, and your pinky is going to rest somewhere on top of the back here, and your index finger is going to end up controlling things. So when I put my fingers like this, we're not actually in position yet. To get in position, we bring the thumb around. So I'll show you from the back. We bring the thumb around and we pronate the wrist, so that if the wrist weren't pronated, it would be, something like this, which is what you typically see when you see people who don't know how to play string instruments playing in movies, pretending as though they do. The actual way to play is pronating the wrist. So just for a moment, try to move your wrist in these two different ways, where you're either bringing this part of the wrist forward or you're bringing this part of the wrist back. This would be called supination. It's the opposite of pronation. But we need to really think about bringing this part of the wrist forward. This is probably one of the most tricky parts to get right about the bow hold. So many beginner students just refuse to move their wrist. But if you can do that, you're already well on your way. And one way that I just think about it, makes sense logically, is that your arm is coming in at an angle to the cello. So if your hand were straight, the bow wouldn't actually be straight on the string. So you have to think about how the bow's coming into contact a little bit more than how the arm's coming into contact. And there's still a way to do this where you're not going to harm your wrist. When we talk about the left hand, we actually do want the wrist to be straight. There's a lot of reasons why it would make sense. We talk a lot about injury prevention and stuff like that. When we talk about learning cello, I know I've talked about it in my other videos for you guys. So the way to do it is to be relaxed still. So you want to have like a feeling of openness in your palm. You don't want your thumb to collapse into the bow, and you don't want to try to be putting your hand touching the bow. What you want to have instead is like a nice, open, relaxed space here, and try to find something where the natural setup gives each of the fingers a simple job. So the job of the index finger is probably the most important. It actually is going to control the amount of weight that you're able to put into the bow most effectively. Without that, it's much, much weaker of a bow hold. But all of the fingers have their role. So the pinky's balancing on the other end, same thing. It falls forwards, if the pinky's not there. The middle two fingers are arguably the least important, but they still play a role in determining just how the hand falls onto the bow. And finally, the thumb, of course. Without the thumb, we're not even holding onto the bow at all. And we want to meet the thumb, like with the left hand, on the opposite side of the second finger. Okay, so I had one teacher talk about it like flicking water off your wrist. So that's like the starting thing. This is just to get your hand in its like natural, like limp position. Because if you put the bow in place, like we just talked about, with the pinky on the back, index finger in front, and then you just gently bring the thumb in to meet and pronate the wrist as you put it on the string, then that's pretty much the bow hold that you're going for. So it might be worth doing that just a few times. No need to go too fast. Just be very precise about it. And then once you're there, it's very important. A lot of the nature of the bow hold and why it's relaxed is so that our fingers can be little springs. So it's okay to just let the bow fall into the string, so to speak, fall. You're going to see the compression of the bow hairs as your arm is just sitting there and not moving yet. But if you can do this, and primarily you're just feeling it in your index finger, because that's where that's coming down, but you can tell that the bow is straight. A mirror helps, or you can do one of these. But learning what it actually will feel like at the frog, the bottom end of the bow, to be in the string. and just trying to memorize that muscle memory feeling. Now, what happens as we bow, you know, just thinking about the fact that I said earlier, we're trying to keep the bow in line. You know, as we bow, do you see the wrist moving? So it starts pronated and then it gets less pronated. It kind of like rotates out. When you get to the tip, your arm's going to be a little more rotated. And then when you do an up bow, you're going to want to lead from your wrist. That you're going to bring that pronation back. So you can also go through this. You'll be here, and then just like really focus on where your hand's going to have to be for the bow to still be on the string, and memorize that muscle memory position, because then you can start trying to connect the two of them when you actually start playing. All right, so one more time, I just kind of want to show you guys different angles. This is my bow hand from the front, from the back, roughly. Okay, and let's just pick the G string to start with. You can start with any string. I think the middle two ones are a little bit easier. The C string you have to really pronate, and the A string is kind of so far over here that you don't get quite the same weight in the string that you do at the middle two. But the middle two, you know, you're pretty much just bringing your hand down, almost like your arms are falling into you. Like if you look at the cello and you're sitting with it, if your arms just start falling towards you, they're falling at the same angle that the strings are. So this is our advantage. You know, all we have to do is really let the weight of our arm pull the bow into the string. We don't have to push into the string. Our arm's going to pull it into a string if we have a good setup. Okay, so before we actually start playing, I'm just going to talk about the rest of the arm and connecting this with the rest of posture, if you watched our posture video, because then we're not going to be missing anything. Okay, so when we start by playing, we want our elbow to be high enough up that we're not, you know, our arm's not pressing into the side of the cello. We also don't want the arm to be so high, although this could offer in some ways some mechanical advantage, that as we start playing, we're not really sure what to do with it. So think about posture for a second. Think about sitting well. Think about feet flat on the floor. Yes, it actually will make a difference. And think about just bringing your arms up symmetrically to this point where the elbows are, you know, 45 degrees down from your shoulder, roughly so. Maybe also 45 degrees forward, maybe 30 degrees forward. And so it's all just estimation anyway. But you want to find the natural way that your arms are up and ready to go, okay? But then you'll obviously bring it into position in order to get the bow to contact at these different places. It's also good to just work on, you know, trying out some different bow lengths. You know, when you're really at the frog, your thumb can hit the string, so you have to kind of maybe lift your hand up a little bit more. If you're middle of the way out on the A string, it can be hard to still get enough weight into the string, so actually lifting your elbow up higher. Just noticing the balances at different places like that, because the thing about the bow hold that probably makes it the trickiest and most difficult to teach outright is not the pronation, and it's not the you know, the relaxed hand position. It's probably just the fact that it does change. So it's really it's something that can only be acquired through just experience and practice. So that's why it's just important to sit down and spend time with it, practice it. Okay, so how do you know that your bow hold's actually good? Well, you play with it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start by talking about playing an open string and what that entails. And we talked about this briefly in our intro video, but you want to start with that good bow hold, and you want to start in the string, and then you want to maybe just start by, you know, allowing your fingers some flexibility. That's ultimately going to be the flexibility of the fingers that allows a note to start well, because you have to realize that we're using, you know, rosin on little hooks on these hairs to continually try to grab at this steel string. I mean, getting it moving, it's like inertia, right? It doesn't want to start moving, so you have to kind of coax it to start moving. For example, that has more bite than if I pluck the string first. So it's actually sometimes a technique to pluck as you play, but we're going to try to work on it from a dead stop, and it's going to work because our fingers are relaxed. If we're super tight, again, we get a crunch at the beginning, a little bit too strong. We have to let the fingers move so that it's a nice, clean, clear start to the note. We're gonna move our arm, we're gonna really watch, and then we're gonna lead with our wrist on the way back up. And then we're gonna pull with our elbow, we'll let our elbow fall rather. And as we're playing, what we wanna really listen for is the resonance of the note. So there's ways of playing where it's kind of light and thin. There's different parts of the string you can play where you're gonna get a little bit of a nastier sound versus a little bit of a thinner sound. It's called sol ponticello and sol tasto. We want to try to find a way of playing that's really going to cause the instrument to start ringing. Every physical object has a resonance frequency, and throughout the cello there are different resonance frequencies, some of them corresponding to the strings, the open strings themselves, different notes. So when we're playing this G, we're also causing a little bit of sympathetic resonance in the D string. We might actually be able to see that the D string is going to also vibrate. It does a little bit, but it might be clearer if I do the C, and then you'll also see the G string. It's because G is in the key of C. So as we're playing the C, some of the higher overtone notes end up, which include G, end up ringing out, and then the G string gets additional resonance. So this is, a little bit complicated, but this is just something we can listen for as we're playing our note. Is it reserved? We don't want to be too aggressive. But perhaps you hear how, as I settled into the note, it rang more. It was bigger and louder and beefier without being more aggressive. So that's what you want to listen for. Try to go as slow as possible. Try to make some different techniques. Just try to see if in 30 seconds or even a minute it can take you to do one whole bow, because that's how controlled you are. It's pretty hard. That wasn't 30 seconds, but it was just an example of the types of things that are useful to practice when you're first trying to find your bow hold. And as you keep playing different things, adapting it will become more natural. And that's sort of really the key to this, is that you want it to start feeling more natural. It's a little bit less about right and wrong. After all, people have different lengths of fingers and different sized hands. So there's not going to be exactly a one-size-fits-all solution for your bow hold, which is also why it's helpful to have a teacher, even some online feedback. However, just knowing that you will work with it, practice it, and try to experiment with it in a bunch of different ways is going to help you just start to find something that feels natural and allows you to start playing the cello. Practicing your open strings in order to get a stronger foundation of your bow hold is really the key thing to practice. That will lead to being able to practice scales and actually have a good tone. So I really hope you guys have been enjoying watching these videos. Certainly been enjoying making them. I love helping cellists who just have a passion for wanting to learn, be able to learn. So we're going to keep posting lesson videos. Stay subscribed to Higher Hertz and click the notification bell so you get all of the notifications of cello lessons. Once more, I'm Justin Leopard, also known as the Vagabond Cellist, and we will certainly see you guys in the next episode. Thanks for watching.